Hi there, my name is Prakash. I'm one of the co-founders and the head of product of Xano. With me on the call, Mr. Sean Montgomery. He is our CEO. I thought that we would do a customer corner video together. So Marcel has had a question for us on Twitter, which basically has a whole app around a creative agency that accepts projects from a client. That client uploads a project, and then the agency can approve the project and then upload assets for that client to download. So we're pretty excited. We're just going to show you how you would do this in Xano, and then you can let us know in the comments below if you have any questions. We're also going to be including a snippet of all of this. So if for those of you that don't use Xano, that actually just want to try this out, you'll be able to do so without even signing up for an account. You can do it anonymously. If you like it, you can claim it and use it for yourself. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the screen to Sean, our CEO, to work this example.
All right, guys. Let me share my screen. Okay. All right, so going back to the list. So we have, it looks like we have 6 steps. So the first one is client creates a project, then uploads assets, and being able to browse for the project, accepting it. So there's a little bit of state change. Once you accept it, you can then download assets. And then once all the project is complete from the creative side, they then upload files as well, which then the client is able to download. So basically we're going to create, so first we'll start out with definitely need users because we're going to do authentication. So that's already there for us. The next thing is I would just create a project here. And I think we can probably just use that. So let's see if that remains true. So first we'll put a title for the project. Then we have, we need a user for who is submitting it. So we'll rename that to customer. We then need to have a creative ID. So that's the group that is accepting it or the user of whatever agency. So we'll rename that to creative ID. What else do we need? Then we need a list of attachment, or actually we need state. So we'll do an enum. So we'll do state. And we have pending, accepted, and then complete. Seems good. We'll default to pending. And then I think we need a list of attachments. So it'd be customer attachments. So we'll do customer attachments. We'll make that a list so they can upload multiple. And then we have creative attachments. We'll do the same thing. So creative attachments. Okay. I think that might be all we need. So now we actually, for a schema, now we need to actually make the API endpoints and make sure that this all works. So the first thing would be, actually, I want to do one more thing. I want to go back to the state and add, oops, another field. I want to have a draft. Instead, yeah, we'll do draft. Okay, so the first, now let's start going through, let me make a fresh group. Or actually, sorry, I can just go in here. Creates a project, uploads assets. So the first thing is create a project. So we'll do create project or create project draft. There's going to be multiple steps. The reason why they're having multiple steps is because of assets. Normally you're like uploading 1, uploading 2. So we'll just treat those as separate API endpoints. So the first thing is, well, so to start off, we want to have a title. So this will create a project. I'm going to hide everything except title. Title is already linked up. That's good. And then customer ID should be linked to the authenticated user. And everything else can, and this should be draft.
And just
Okay.
expand the inputs real quick. So
Oh, yeah.
what we've done real quick is this API endpoint. This is our no-code API builder. We've taken in an input. That's what the user feeds us from the front end. And we are going to add a record to the project table using the fields that Sean just linked up.
Yeah, so let's go back or here. We'll create a couple of users. We'll say Sean customer and then Sean creative. And we can just leave those emails blank. So the first thing is now we can do run and debug. We'll say Sean customer. We'll say my first project. So if I create that, looks like I created my first project. The customer ID is 1. State is draft. Okay, awesome. So
And also, if you've never seen this before, what Sean just did on the run and debug, Xano has a cool way of like allowing you to very quickly authenticate as any user in your system without having to create a whole sign up and login form. So it basically takes that authenticated user ID and then it passes it in to that database. That's why the customer ID was 1.
Yeah. Okay, so the next thing would probably be, now that we've created that, we need to see a list of draft. Actually, I'm going to rename this so we can get some organization. We'll call this project / create draft. Okay, so now everything under the project will be stuff that we're using. So the next thing is I want to see my projects.
And I think he wanted it to where the client could upload images into the project.
Yeah, that'll be coming next. So now I have project my draft. So now that you uploaded, you can imagine you go to another screen, you want to see your drafts. So here we need to do 2 conditionals. First one is customer ID is equal to authenticated user. The next one is state is equal to draft. Okay. We can just do run and debug again. And we should see a list of 1. Okay, so far so good. All right, so the next thing is uploading attachments. So it'd be /project. Let's see, project upload customer attachment. Oh, I did a double slash. Okay, so here we need to go to storage, get a file resource. And then I also need to know what the project is. So project ID. We then come here. No, I want to do get record project. So we'll link up the project. We then want to do an assertion or precondition, which is saying project1 dot customer ID is equal to the authenticated ID. So we just want to make sure that only the customer is uploading this file. Customers only. We can say access denied. All right, so now that we've got that, then we can actually update. So then I'm going to update the project. We're just mapping the same ID. And the one thing we want to change is customer attachments. So here we want to update it with itself and then I will append an item to that. Although I just realized I need to first, so we have a file resource, we then need to convert that into an attachment. So we've got my attachment, and this is file. We'll move that up here. Okay. So now, so basically what that does is, so you're uploading a file. Let's say it's a PDF. That's a binary. We then need to convert that into its metadata. So we only store the metadata in the database. So if a file, let's say a file is like a gigabyte large, which is pretty big, that would not be slowing down the database because that's in separate storage. But what we do need to do, what we need is to have all this metadata, so which just describes information about the file, so that when you're loading this project, you have enough information where you can appropriately load that, whether or not that's like an image preview, if it's a, let's say a JPEG, or if it's a download link, if you need to download the PDF or something else. So now we have my attachment. So my attachment is just the metadata. And here we're assigning customer attachments equal to itself. The one thing we want to change here is that we then want to push a new element, which is the my attachment. Okay, so that should work.
And just to summarize this function stack here. So again, go to that API endpoint real quick, Sean, just so I can explain it. So in that API endpoint, we're collecting a file from the user, can be binary like a PDF file, and we're also getting the associated project ID. The first thing that we're going to do is go to the project database table, and we're basically going to make sure that there's that match, right? So when you run this API endpoint, you have to provide a project ID that this is associated with it. And then line 2 on the function stack says, hey, we want to make sure, you can see it's an authentication required at the top. We want to make sure that this customer that's uploading files into this project is the customer associated with the project. And if not, we're going to throw an error saying you're not the right customer. So that's what number 2 does. Number 3, as Sean mentioned, really, we don't want to store that file in the database itself for performance reasons. We just want to store the metadata and including the location of that file. So that's what line 3 does. And then finally on line 4, that's where we're actually saving everything on there. And you'll notice that Sean pushed the file in to an object or an array. And the reason why we're doing it this way is because a client can upload multiple files. If it was just one, we wouldn't need to do that push. We would just upload the file into the cell. But if the client wants to upload 20 files, that's why we do the push. So with that said, Sean, what's the next step?
Yeah, so the next step is to see if that actually works. So our run and debug does not support uploading files, so we'll have to use the Swagger documentation. So I'm going to do that right now. Sean Creative at Xano.com. The password will be customer123 and then creative123. So we'll come back here. We'll go to the Swagger documentation. So the first thing is I have to, so unfortunately this doesn't let you have that easy token. So we have to actually type it in here. That's not a big deal. So Sean customer.
Yeah, but as you're typing it out, this is when you do authentication with any application, you usually log in, and usually it's like a email and password, and then the application passes you an authentication token. So this is just the underpinnings of how that works. So Sean is manually then taking that token and he's authorizing with Swagger. And Swagger is basically just a documentation front end where you can test all the endpoints. So now that he's authenticated, he's looking at that endpoint, the one that he just created. He's providing that project ID, and now he's going to select a PDF to upload.
Okay, so I uploaded that, but it looks like I didn't. Let's try that again. Oh, I think it's off by 1. Oh, that's why. So I edited the record. Project 2 has the updated copy, so we can actually just rename this to Project 1, just in a different variable. So we uploaded 2 of those, and let me change this. So we have 2 sample PDFs, and then we'll do a document PDF. I just downloaded a couple samples from the web. So now we should have 3 files. You can see here, sample PDF, that's the first one, sample PDF, the second copy, and then we have document. And if we go back to the database and project, you can see over here, we have 3 files, which is pretty cool. And you could, if you click on these, you then can see more information, right? And you can download, do whatever you want to do there. So I'd say that's, so the next step is submit for pending.
Yeah, so I think the creative then accepts the project, and that changes it, that changes the state. They upload their own creative after it's done, and then the client downloads it, and then all is happy.
Yeah, so let me do a clone query. So we'll do mark pending. Okay, so here we don't need the file. So we get project, but we still want to enforce access. We'll get rid of the attachment, and then edit. We can get rid of this. All we want to do is mark this as pending. Okay, so we can actually, because we're not uploading files, we can go back to the run and debug. So I will just mark this as number 1. And if we see this, it should now be pending. We can also go back to the database, see state pending. Okay, so I think we're halfway there. Then we need a way for creative to search for projects that are pending. So we'll say projects pending or creative. Technically, we want to do authentication here. But what we really want to do is just do an endpoint where state is equal to pending. Okay, so right now we're all using the same database table, the user table. So a user can technically be a customer and as well as creative. Maybe that's okay. Potentially there's room for like adding different roles, but that'd be kind of like outside the scope. So for right now, I'm just allowing everyone to kind of commingle. But so right now we want to see, this should be returning pending items. So I'm going to actually make another one. Actually, I can just use the API here. So I will go to create draft. I'll say my second project. So that should now be draft. We go back to the database, just double check, pending and draft. We then see pending for creative. This should just return 1, even though there's 2 exist. If we close that, yeah, perfect. So we've got 1. Okay, so the next thing would be to accept project. Actually, before we do that, because we're actually returning everything, maybe we probably don't want people to see the attachment, or maybe we do. I don't know. Maybe you want to preview the attachments first. But let's say we don't want to. Maybe it's like special stuff. We could customize the output and just not show attachments. So basically that title better be enticing. Right, so now no one can peek on anything. But then once you, I think that makes sense, because then once you confirm, once you accept, you'd be able to see everything. So we'll go back to mark pending. We'll clone this. And we'll do accept or creative. Okay, so we're getting the project. We then have a precondition, but in this example, we want not allowed. This example, we want, what do we want? The status, I think it's status, is equal to pending. You don't want someone else taking over a project that someone else is already working on. So not status, it's state. So we'll do state. Okay, so we're getting the project. We're checking that it's pending. Then we can edit the project. So it's no longer pending, it's accepted, and creative ID is my authenticated ID. All right. And then you get to see all the details. So now we can do run and debug. We'll change the token to Sean Creative. We'll say project 1. And now we see all the attachments. It's changed to accepted, and creative ID 2, which is my second account, has been set up. So now if we actually try to run this again, like can you claim something twice? We should get that exception. Access denied. Perfect. Okay, so now we have accepted the project, and just the presence of those that metadata means that you could download the assets because you have those links. Then once it's done, we need to upload attachments. So we will clone this one because it's very similar. So upload creative attachment. So we're going to get record from project, and then instead of customer ID, we want creative ID. All right, so just a different role or a different persona here. Same thing applies. We're turning a binary into metadata, except here we don't want customer attachments. We want creative attachments. So we got project 1 dot creative, attachments, and then we do the filter, the push, and we're pushing the metadata. Okay, so I think that's actually what we want here.
Should be everything.
Yeah, so let's reload this.
And just as this is reloading, this UI, the Swagger, is automatically included with Xano. We automatically document everything for you, and there's a link in the API group where you can access it. So Sean's going to log in now as the creative agency, get that authorization token so he can tell Swagger, hey, I'm now a creative person. And he's now going to upload some documents as a creative person into that project.
Yeah, upload creative, and we will do the larger file. So we'll say instructions for adding your logo. Project 1. Oh, looks good. So we still have customer attachments, which should be 3, but now we should have creative attachments. Okay, so we could upload, you could do 1, 2, whatever. It's a multi-step process. Once we have that, we then want to, just as the same way as the customer marks the project is pending, we want to then have the creative mark it as complete. All right, so we got clone, so mark complete. Precondition, instead of customer ID, we want creative ID. And we probably also want, you can only mark a project that is accepted complete. So we don't have someone double completing. So this should be simple. This is just changing it to complete. And I think that is it. So we'll do, just make sure that this is the right one. Here, well, I'll actually try to screw it up. I'll try to have the customer complete this. That should throw an error. Yep. And then we'll change that to the creative. Uh-oh. Oh, I screwed up the typo again. State instead of status. Let's try that again. Creative ID. Let's look at the debugger and see where this is screwing up. So we're getting back project. We have creative ID. State accepted.
Is there a space where the accepted is? No.
Oh, let's get rid of project one creative ID. So does this work? It does work. So there must have been a typo in that. I must have had a typo there. But now this is already marked as completed. So then I think actually, so the cherry on top would be my completed drafts. My completed. And that would just be complete or accept, or no, not accepted. Complete. So now if I do, this should return nothing because I think it's the creative. If I swap it to customer, it should return one, even though I have two, because one's in a draft. And that's it.
Perfect. So
should I do the snippet as well?
Yeah, let's go ahead and save this as a snippet. And so, and snippets are relatively new. We're going to do a more official announcement, but snippets effectively allow you to save and share any Xano project or pieces of that project. And so we'll also, Sean, include some of those attachments if that's okay. So they have stuff to work with, but he's basically going to name this snippet, and we're going to include a link to this snippet, which will be generated after Sean completes this. We're going to include it in the link below or in the description below. So, you know, this is kind of, you can obviously see how quick it is to build a fully functioning backend for your application, you know, including debugging and everything else. So I definitely recommend that you watch this back. But when you're watching it back, you'll have the actual project where you can experiment with, you can change values. I think Sean had set it up to where when the creative is looking at it, they don't get to see the attachments. So you can play around with customizing the response and seeing the attachments. You can do lots of different things with this. So you can see he's just generated a snippet, and I'll put that snippet, and then you are able to, like I said, try this out, bring this into your existing Xano workspace, and follow along with this video. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you, Sean, for walking through this example. Let us know if there are other things that you'd like to see built. We obviously get lots of requests, but we always have fun doing this and helping our customers or potential users out. Okay, so thank you so much and have a great day.